kind of sort of goth cult figure in a strange way, and in America and in Central Europe. So she is, in her own murderousness, quite a significant figure.
In the early 17th century, rumors began to circulate around the Slovakian village of Trenčín. Peasant girls looking for servant work in the Csejte Castle were disappearing, and no one knew why. But it wasn't long until many locals started pointing the finger at Countess Elizabeth Bathory.
And by torturing them, sometimes sexually, she would burn their pubic hair with candle flames. She would make her seamstresses do their work naked.
Bathory, who was of a powerful Hungarian family and the product of alleged inbreeding between Baron György Bathory and Baroness Anna Bathory, called the Csejte Castle home. She had received the castle as a wedding gift from her husband, the famed Hungarian war hero Ferenc Nadasdy. By 1578, Nadasdy had become the chief commander of the Hungarian army and embarked on a military campaign against the Ottoman Empire, leaving his wife in charge of his vast estates as well as the governing of the local populace. At first, everything appeared to be going well under Bathory's leadership. However, as time went on, rumors started to spread that she was torturing her servants.
You didn't iron her things properly, she would put an iron onto your face and leave you marked for life.
And when Bathory's husband died in 1604, these views became much more widespread and dramatic, as she would soon be accused of not only torturing, but killing hundreds of women and girls who entered her castle.
It's at that point that she becomes truly sadistic, I think. She is on her own. She now has all the power of his name and hers concentrated in herself. She is the chatelaine of many castles with many servants.
Today, Elizabeth Bathory is infamously remembered as the Blood Countess, who killed up to 650 girls and women in the Kingdom of Hungary.
Over 600 dead. There are always rumors. My servants would not betray me. They know their fate if they do.
And if all the stories about her are true, then she is likely the most prolific and vicious female serial killer of all time.
Then with Elizabeth, the downfall came, and this isn't something that's uncommon when you look at these types of killers. She became reckless, she was killing more and more and not particularly concerned about where their bodies were being found.
Bathory was born on August 7th, 1560 in György, Hungary. Raised in a noble family, Bathory knew a life of privilege from an early age, and some speculate that she used that power in order to commit these heinous crimes.
In the 16th century, it was very commonplace to torture peasants and servants. They really were considered chattel.
According to witnesses, Bathory's crimes took place between 1590 and 1610, with most of the vicious murders happening after her husband's death in 1604.
Her husband, apparently with one of his servant girls, doused her in honey and made her stand outside for at least a day while she was being stung by wasps and ants, naked.
Her first targets were said to have been poor girls and young women who were lured to the castle with the promise of servant work. But as the story goes, Bathory didn't stop there. She allegedly expanded her sights and began killing daughters of the gentry who had been sent to the castle for their education.
Really, her obsession became sexuality, it became youth and power.
She also supposedly kidnapped girls from the local area who would never have gone to the castle out of their own free will. As a wealthy noblewoman, Bathory evaded the law until 1610, and by that point she had reportedly killed multiple victims of noble birth, which concerned the authorities far more than the deaths of the servants. And as a result of this, the Hungarian king Matthias II sent his most high-ranking representative, a man by the name of György Thurzó, to go investigate the complaints made against Bathory.
György Thurzó, the Palatine, sends his troops into the castle and accompanies them in. We have this graphic account which he actually writes to his wife. He finds the dead body of a servant girl immediately upon entering, and the dying body of another one.
Thurzó collected evidence from approximately 300 witnesses, which accounted for truly horrifying charges against the Countess. And according to contemporary reports, as well as stories told long after, Elizabeth Bathory tortured young girls and women in unspeakable ways. She allegedly burned her victims with hot irons, beat them to death with clubs, stuck needles under their fingernails, poured ice water over their bodies and left them to freeze to death outside in the cold, while also covering them in honey so that the bugs could feast on their exposed skin. She also sewed their lips together and bit off chunks of flesh from their breasts and faces.
Court records held in Budapest reveal that she would often take pleasure in torturing them slowly to maximise their pain and suffering.
Witnesses also claim that Bathory's favorite method of torture was using scissors in order to mutilate her victims' faces and bodies.
Elizabeth Bathory had a terrible temper, and she enjoyed torturing people. She enjoyed humiliating them.
It was said that she cut off their hands, noses, and genitals while also using the scissors to slice open the skin between her victims' fingers. Those horrific acts of violence, as well as the sometimes supernatural legends surrounding the crimes, help to define Elizabeth Bathory's terrifying legacy today.
Pretty much all sexual sadists are psychopaths, and Elizabeth would probably be in that category.
At the time of Thurzó's investigation, some accused her of being a vampire, while others claimed to have seen her have sex with the devil.
That's the kind of savagery and sadism that you would see in somebody that was quite deranged, actually.
Perhaps the most infamous accusation, and the one that inspired her nickname, the Blood Countess, was the claim that she bathed in her young victims' blood in order to maintain a youthful appearance. And although the story is by far the most memorable, it's also extremely unlikely to have been true, as the claim didn't even appear in print until after she'd been dead for more than a century. Considering the mythologized elements of Bathory's alleged crimes, it begs the question of how much of this bloody story is actually true and how much of it was made up for the sole purposes of just taking down a powerful and wealthy woman.
This is all part of the conspiracy myth, and you can find it in the latest Hungarian big encyclopedia. You look up Elizabeth Bathory, and there it will explain that it was a conspiracy to do her down and get hold of her land. This is not the case at all and defies the historical evidence.
After hearing the accusations, Thurzó ultimately charged Bathory with the deaths of 80 girls. That said, one witness claimed to have seen a book kept by Bathory herself where she recorded the names of all of her victims, 650 in total. This diary, however, appears to have only been a legend.
I haven't seen any evidence that she was the vampire that she's been portrayed as in folklore. But records do indicate that a large number of girls did die whenever she was around.
When the trial ended, Bathory's alleged accomplices, one of whom worked as a wet nurse for the Countess's children, were convicted of witchcraft and burnt at the stake. Bathory was spared from execution due to her nobility status. However, she was bricked up and isolated in a room in the castle where she remained under house arrest for 4 years until her death in 1614. Bathory's case, however, may not have been as cut and dry as it seemed, as some modern Hungarian scholars say that it may have been motivated more by the power and greed of others rather than her supposed evil. It turned out that King Matthias II owed Bathory's husband as well as her a sizable debt.
The king owes you so much.
The king owes me a fortune, which is to my advantage.
Matthias was not inclined to pay that debt, which historians say may have fueled his move to incriminate the Countess in multiple crimes and deny her the opportunity to defend herself in court.
To have put her to death, you'd have needed a trial, and that's what they want to avoid. And in a sense, what we have is an informal penalty.
Historians also say that witnesses probably provided their incriminating and contradictory testimony under duress, and that the king called for the death penalty before Bathory's family could intervene on her behalf.
We tend to regard now that any evidence obtained under torture is inauthentic. The view in the 17th century was that evidence obtained under torture is more authentic, so they will torture people as a matter of recourse.
This too could have been politically motivated, as the death penalty meant that the king could seize her land. Historians go on to say that Bathory's true story could have looked more like this. The Countess owned strategically important land that increased her family's already vast wealth, and as an intelligent, powerful woman who ruled without a man at her side, as well as being a member of a family whose wealth intimidated the king, his court went on a mission to discredit and ruin her.
There is a revisionist or apologist movement in Hungary trying to redress the Bathory legend.
Now, the best case scenario was that Bathory abused her servants, but nowhere near the level of violence that was alleged at her trial. Worst case, she was a blood-sucking demon from hell sent to murder young women.
The light slowly leaking from your eyes. It's powerful. The pain pleasures me.
Both make for a compelling story, even if only one of them is actually true.